Ben, thank you for joining us. What do you think the mood is in the Conservative Parliamentary Party at the moment?
Well, it's certainly been a pretty terrible few weeks. I think, I've had constituents in my surgery this morning expressing exactly the view that you've just put across. As a Member of Parliament, it is perhaps doubly frustrating because we see both the unfairness of that, but also then get the 1,000 emails in the inbox where we are guilty by association. And that is incredibly frustrating as an MP. You want to be able to support the government and the PM. It's not been easy to do that over the last few weeks. I think the key thing going forward, can't fix the past, is that the PM now gets a grip of this. There needs to be that investigation. There needs to be outcomes. There needs to be punishment for those who have broken rules, and we need to get a grip of it.
I mean, the difficulty here is, isn't it, that there's going to carry on being a drip, drip, drip of revelations. We saw last night it emerged that the Prime Minister's press secretary, Jack Doyle, was at that party and apparently read out awards. As far as I know, unless something's happened in the last hour or so, he is not yet resigned. Should all of those involved in that party, the notorious one, just quit now, or are you otherwise going to just string out the pain?
Well, everybody needs to have a good hard look at themselves. I think the idea that, these things are ever secret, that things that they think are secret will remain secret, is just nonsense. We know that this stuff comes out, and if they feel they've been involved in things that were wrong, they should hold their hands up immediately. The idea, that they should not take that fall if they have done wrong, and they should throw the PM under the bus instead, both politically and morally, is not the right thing to do. So I think that's a question for them. I also think that whether the rules were strictly speaking broken or not, whether it was a meeting with wine or a party, all that kind of debate is kind of irrelevant, because what is clear is that what has happened, whether it was trying to push the boundaries of the rules or breaking them or whatever, is something that's not been found to be morally acceptable, and they need to, as I say, have a good hard look at themselves. And if they think that they have pushed those boundaries and they've not had the respect for the office that they hold that they should have, then they should consider that position, I think.
So just to be plain and talk in simple language here, do you think all those involved should resign?
I think if they've broken rules, or they think that they have overstepped the mark, and they might think that things are hidden away for the time being, as you said, we can't have a steady drip of things coming out over the next few days and weeks. If they think that they are hiding things currently, then they should make that plain now and go. As the PM said,
Do you personally have confidence in the Prime Minister?
As I said, I think he needs to get a grip of this. I think he's been let down by a lot of people around him in the last few weeks, and that's incredibly frustrating. He's got a lot going on. We've got a global pandemic. We're still dealing with all sorts of issues around Brexit and other international challenges. And he is now having to defend or to talk about his staff having a party. That's not right, and it should be those people protecting the Prime Minister, not throwing him under the bus, so to speak. So, yeah, he needs to get a hold of it. I think that he can, and that he will, and that, that investigation is the right thing. But he hasn't got, he's not got forever to do that. We need to get a grip of it quickly.
And you've described yourself as the first brick in the red wall, the so-called red wall of former Labour strongholds in the Midlands and the North that are now held as Tory seats. Now, one thing I've noticed, just looking at social media, is that the scale of concern among Red Wall Tories about the events of the last week, they seem to be particularly vocal about it. Is that something that you've picked up, that Red Wall colleagues are especially worried about this? I mean, presumably they're beginning to get worried about their seats.
Well, I think one of the key things that's come across to me in a number of elections, and some of the reason that I think this shift from Labour to Conservatives in some of these seats has happened, has been about fairness. And when you look at some of the situations that are really important to some of those communities, small boats, for example, people put it down to all sorts of things. Really, it's about fairness. It's about paying into the system and getting out from the system in the right ways and the right proportions. This is a similar problem. This is about fairness. And if it's that perception of one rule for them and another one for us is a really powerful and damaging thing. And as I say, it's something we need to get a grip of, because there have been multiple examples of that over the last few weeks.
Now, you're all going to be keen to look forward, not back. Next week, I think there's going to be a vote, isn't there, on the proposed so-called Plan B restrictions. Tell us where you stand on Plan B and whether these measures are necessary.
It makes me really uncomfortable, to be honest, as well. I think we are in a position where, ironically, Theresa May was pretty sound on this earlier in the week, saying, there's only so long that you can impose restrictions on a just-in-case basis or turn the taps on and off on the economy just in case. I think you have to ask the question how many times you go round that loop before you're in a position where you just got to have to live with it. And I think that the cost and the challenge of things like COVID passports for many businesses, the impact of additional restrictions causing cancellations across the board is a real and genuine one in terms of jobs and employment, but also in terms of isolation, mental health, and all the challenges that we're facing, not to mention the inherent kind of unfairness, I think, of vaccine passports and this discussion about mandatory vaccinations, which would just be abhorrent. So makes me really uncomfortable, and I think I'm going to have to vote against at least parts of it next week.
And I think quite a significant number of your colleagues will be doing that. How do you see the vote actually falling next week?
Well, Labour have made quite clear that they will back it, which I think means it's probably almost inevitable that it will pass. I think that's a shame. There really needs to be scrutiny and a proper debate about this. As I say, some of those things, particularly where the data still says that zero people have been hospitalised because of this new strain of the virus. I really struggle to justify those restrictions on that basis. Unfortunately, as I say, it seems likely to pass anyway, and we're going to have to abide by those rules. But there's already talk of, Plan C and what comes next, and it just begs the question, how long do you go on? As I say, turning the taps on and off on the economy, because it won't last that long. We are not just an economy, an appendage to the NHS as a country. We've got to protect those other elements: lives, livelihoods, incomes, people's mental health and social lives and rights and freedoms just as much as we need to protect lives and health.